Oh, I'm glad I called early. You are using the computer audio. I don't want to use the computer audio. I want to switch that because that computer audio I found out isn't as good. Okay. Why isn't it switching there? Yeah, I found I did a meeting with someone and it wasn't very loud. You could barely hear me, and then I figured I've got to start looking at options for audio because it really was not very audible. Okay.
Good. You need a good microphone.
How do you do that? I mean, I have lots of microphones, but how do you do the microphone connected to the Zoom?
I just use a headset, like
Yeah,
use from your phone or something.
yeah. I have those, but you wear the headset when you do them, then, huh?
Yes.
Huh.
So both that way, it cuts out any background noise because it's plugged into the computer, and it also works as a microphone.
Okay, so I don't know if I can do that today. I do have those, but I don't have any more connections for inputs to my computer with the right dongle, I don't think. Wait, yeah. I might. Let me try one. I have one that is supposed to connect here. Oh no, I don't have the dongle for it. I'd either have to let go of my light, which I don't want to let go of. Yeah, I'd need one more dongle for this. Well, you live and you learn. I'll have to get another dongle and get another mic input then. Okay, so it's recording now. I didn't want it to record. Oh no. All this has been recorded. I'm going to admit you to the room. I'll just have to edit this all out.
So just put the recording,
pause. I'm going to hit recording and see if you come on, because I have, no,
there you go.
Yeah, because I paused it. Now I'm on a picture. Now let me see if it switches. No, I'm talking and it doesn't switch back to me.
You have to go click the little icon at the bottom of the screen next to mute. There you go.
Okay. So, but does it know now? I mean, because I'm talking now and you're there, but does it go to me or you, or how does it? I thought it switched automatically. I guess not.
It switches automatically. Whoever is speaking, as long as you have it on speaker view, whoever is speaking, they will be the one highlighted in the photo. And then when you're recording this, when you play it back, you'll see that who's ever speaking is the face that pops up on the screen.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I had an extra 5 minutes not to freak out about this. But it's weird because I didn't actually click anything that should have not allowed your video. And it wasn't until I hit record that you came on, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. So you want to scoot back a little bit so that
my audio, when I did that, my audio wasn't very good.
I can hear you really well.
Oh, can you? Okay. All right. Then that's good. Because I was worried. That's why I've leaned in, because one time I did a recording in the audio. Now let me turn off my watches and do airplane mode and all that stuff, so we don't get any interruptions here. Airplane mode on. Okay, so now that, and I'll turn my phone down just in case. So see, this is then now recording. I'll just now have to edit this out. I did make a little, first time that I've used on these computers, you know what? My brand new computer doesn't have the iMovie. They dropped it on the new computer. So thank God I've got an older computer. I created on iMovie a little. Aloha, welcome to the Peace Projects. I'm Cindy Paulos, and I'm here with a wonderful friend, and she's part of our Peace Projects team, Deidre Teagarden, the Executive Director of the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center. Deidre, it's so nice to have you here.
Well, it is wonderful to be here with you, Cindy, and all of your friends, and it's really an honor to be on your first show. I am excited about that and excited about everything that you're doing as it relates to peace. I think you're marvelous, and congratulations on putting this together.
Well, I invited you for a couple of reasons. You have been an inspiration for this in many ways. The work you've done with your mother, Melinda, I'm going to have on the show next week. is a peace activist, and she was an inspiration for so many. She has a passion for peace I've rarely seen in anyone. She took you to Japan when you were young. She went and interviewed many of the survivors of Hiroshima. She's worked and knows the importance of peace. And because of everything that you've learned going and growing up and spending time in Japan, you speak fluent Japanese, and you now work for the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center. You're able to communicate in Japanese, and you've gone to Japan many times, and you've been influenced by the understanding of how the peace effort is so important. And I thought, what a unique opportunity to understand you and your mother, the influences of her dedicated work for peace, and how important that really is. I mean, you truly are living what your mother has taught you through your work. So how, when you first were young and seeing your mother's work towards understanding the importance of peace, how did it affect you, and how did it kind of influence you as you are in your work today?
Well, I definitely, both my brother and I are very thankful to our mother for taking us to Japan back when she did. We lived there for several years, and yes, she was doing research on, at that time, interviews with A-bomb survivors in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it was in the early 80s that she was doing this, and we had the I guess the honor or to learn these stories firsthand. I mean, they're very difficult stories, but as you will speak with her next week, you know, these people really allowed us to learn firsthand the devastation of war, the devastation of the nuclear bombs, and how they were able to go beyond that devastation and that violence to live lives of their own. And I think what was so surprising is there wasn't I guess we would assume that there was a hatred or a dislike toward Americans, but we really never encountered that. The people that we met with had gotten beyond that to talk about the importance of never having something like that happen again. And so every day we just heard those messages of peace, and not to focus on all of the travesties that had happened, rather take all of those, understand what they were, and move forward to make sure something like that never happened again. And I think that philosophy had a big impact on both my brother and I over the years, and to this day.
And it's interesting, from that early influence, which is life-changing, really. I mean, very few people could say they grew up, that are from the West, could say they grew up with that kind of background, to where you are now at the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, again, hearing stories from the very brave and valiant and many times humble, beyond belief, humble survivors of those who fought in World War II, when the rest of their family and friends and countrymen were often put in concentration camp. They were put in internment camps. And meanwhile, they were out there fighting for peace, having to survive, and many of them didn't survive the battle of World War II. And you've heard some stories from them that are also life-changing.
Yes, I mean the story of the Nisei soldiers of World War II is just one that is heart-wrenching, and at the same time is full of valor. And these were men who a nation had decided were enemies just because of how they looked. because Nisei means second generation Japanese, Sansei is third generation Japanese. But a lot of these men, primarily from Hawaii, and then of course on the West Coast, they were called aliens, and they, especially on the West Coast, but also here in Hawaii, we had a definite internment story where the professors, the businessmen, the teachers, they were all put into internment camps. And on the West Coast, you have a much larger internment story. But yeah, so these people's parents were put in internment camps, shipped away, and yet their sons went to fight for America to prove their loyalty. And I think it was President Truman at the end of the war said to this specific group of Nisei soldiers, you fought not only prejudice on the battlefields far away, you fought it right here at home and won. And as a result, our Hawaii was transformed by their coming back, and opened up many opportunities for those next several generations of Japanese Americans. But they all went with those values of responsibility and loyalty and duty and shame. Don't shame your family. You go and fight. You are Americans, and even though you're of Japanese ancestry. And yeah, there are so many stories that are just, you can't believe them. But we had one of our veterans in one of our oral histories said, we did what we had to do at that time. Many of them came back, of course, started businesses, got into politics, but a common theme that we hear from them, it has been, war is hell. Don't go to war. Be nice to one another. It's just, what you lose is not worth it. So the stories and the sacrifices of those men and their families are something that we hold as our foundation. We share those, and we also like to share that message of let's not make these same mistakes again, whether it's internment or.
So beautifully put. And I can't help but think, as I'm listening to these stories and what you've been through and what they've been through, how important it must have been for them to learn to forgive, because the families, some of them lost everything and didn't get back what they had. There were people who were doctors, lawyers. There were wonderfully dedicated people who had done nothing wrong who lost everything. There were these people who went and lost their friends who were Niseis, who died. So many died in these battles. And the pain and resentment could have completely eaten up all of these people's lives if they didn't learn forgiveness. So I think there's a theme that I might like to explore a little bit, how forgiveness can bring peace.
You're exactly right. I hadn't thought of it like that, but you're right. It is all about forgiveness, and in every aspect of what we do, isn't it?
Well, if we are to learn, as you have, from all these amazing stories, think of all the stories that are literally movies in your head that you've experienced from listening to these people's life stories. But if these people who have gone on to be leaders in their own right, even here in Hawaii, so many who were involved in politics, if they hadn't learned to forgive and change their course, if they had taken that anger and hurt and resentment and let it grow, they would have not been able to continue to just even where you're sitting right now, because the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center was built on the dedication of these people who were so brave and wanted and were so completely feeling that they had to do something important that was valuable, that was good from their experiences.
Yes, there was a luncheon in 1952 where the returning 100th infantry guys got together, and they adopted a motto of continuing service, giving back to your community. And each island here in Hawaii, that manifested itself in a different way. And for us here on Maui, it was basically our center. which took many years and many amazing people and lots of hard work to create, but it started with an intergenerational center. So on our campus, we have both a preschool and an adult daycare center. And then, of course, we have our center downstairs with an education center where we hold exhibits and an archive with over 200 special collections from Maui's Nisei and Sansei veterans. But the point is, yes, they forgave somehow, and they came back to do great things. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for them and for their idea of continuing service. You know, and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, they adopted the motto of "Go for broke." You know, just give it your all.
Yes.
And I think those two mottos really share exactly what these men and their families were all about, because the families sacrificed so much also.
If we just were to take that concept of forgiveness and put it in our minds to the Middle East and to the Palestinian and Israeli conflict, there's been such a desire for peace for so long there. And now, of course, there's so many people around the world. But if for just a moment we could understand how forgiveness could change the hatred, the death, the conflicts, the devastation that happens. But it seems so hard for some people who are so fatally wounded inside that they can't forgive, that seems to continue and perpetuate on, to the point where some people say, well, there never can be peace in the Middle East. How many times have you heard that? People said they tried, and they failed. So we have to then take that concept back to inside us, because Buddha said, peace begins within. Don't look for it without. So if indeed, I think that these Nisei veterans, I think that the families, I think that the people that had to be interned in those really difficult camps, I wonder if their philosophy and maybe even Buddhism or something found that place of peace within them, found that place that they were able to achieve that peace that might have then been able to carry forth that healing process.
You know, I often wonder if, because the Nisei, the second generation, whose parents were Issei, first generation, if they were somehow able to take that philosophy of Buddhism and forgiveness and respect and endurance, you know, that is such a big concept in Japan of gammon. It's not just patience. I mean, it's hardcore endurance. If they were able to take all of that and also mix it with that American, you know, we're going to get it done, that Americanism, to have this really, I don't know, come up with this philosophy of combining the two of them. If that helped them along the way, I don't know. But you know, you talk about Buddhism and everything is within. I mean, if that is true, if we all were able to practice forgiveness, and we could start with really little things like forgiving your friend on Facebook for not having your exact political ideas.
Thank you.
You know, there's so much of that.
Yeah.
You can be both. You can love your friend and at the same time perhaps disagree with their philosophy about you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If we can really, doesn't mean you have to accept it. It doesn't mean you have to accept that viewpoint, but perhaps you can still love your friend. You know, where is that balance, and you know, how do we make that happen?
Thank you for bringing that up, because I know you ran for office, and you're certainly qualified. You have a wonderful background and you have all the qualifications, and you are a woman, but there are other women who've run for office, but it did get extremely painful and negative. And it's very hard when people bring out tools that are frightening, and attack in ways that are shocking sometimes, even here in the land of aloha. And I have to bring up that your mother, your wonderful mother, Melinda Clark, has tied in, and she did a peace pilgrimage sharing the aloha, and she understands that concept of aloha and the importance of it. And I keep saying, if we can't have aloha, and this has been challenging times this last year, and if we can't share the aloha here, where in the world can it be shared? You understand that because your mother's passion for aloha.
You're exactly right. And, I think whether we talk about the Nisei values or what Buddha taught, what our state teaches, the law of aloha is written into our Constitution here in the state of Hawaii. And that's huge. And yes, aloha, my mother made these pins that she took with her to Japan on her pilgrimage about aloha and the idea of it. And it was beautiful. She gave them out all around at the different temples and different people she met. But yes, I mean, Hawaii is known for its aloha. It's in our Constitution. We talk about it, but sometimes perhaps we don't practice it as much as we could. And if you really look at the meaning and what aloha is supposed to do, I think that is just another way that if we actually practice that, practice the golden rule, wouldn't things be better little by little?
And aloha is needed, always needed, but it's needed now especially because there's so many people who are full of fear. I see a lot of fear coming in about what's going to be happening politically, yes. Also, what's going to happen when visitors come back, and fear about people catching COVID-19, fear about so many things. And I have to see that seeds of fear, wherever there's fear, you can see peace going right out the window. Because fear is the opposite of having peace. When you're at peace, you're not full of fear. When you're at peace, you are finding that place inside where there's love and contentment and understanding. And it really is the fear completely can dissipate that peace when you have fear.
And I agree. And I think that you can still be cautious, but you can also have peace. It's not as if you have to be either or. I think this is just my opinion, but I think sometimes in Western culture, we jump to it's either this or it's that. You're either right or you're wrong. If you don't agree with me, I can't speak to you anymore. I mean, we are maybe it's a divisive mentality, whereas, and again, just my own opinion, and this is growing up for many years in Japan and China and living there, there's more of that middle area. There's more of that gray area. You can be peaceful, but you can be cautious. You can endure, but you don't have to accept poor treatment. There's a way to balance the two. And I think if we could find as humanity more of a balance, it doesn't always work, of course. There are extreme situations, and that's just the way it is. But I think that there's a way that we can practice more of a balance and realize that you can be afraid of COVID. Therefore you can be cautious, and you can wear your masks, and you can wear gloves when you fill up your car with gasoline, if you still have a gasoline car. There are things you can do, but you can also be at peace. And to find that perfect balance, that is the Holy Grail.
Well, that's also in Buddhism called the middle path, Buddhism is called following the middle path for that reason, for exactly what you so beautifully said. Because when you are in that middle path, and sometimes that middle path can be called also a razor's edge, because you can slip either way and fall off. But yeah, it doesn't have to be either or if you are centered with your intention on that path, and an intention, again, of resetting yourself, of doing something good and working for good with peace in your heart and peace in your soul, then yes, all the rest teaches us as we go. And it's not easy. I mean, because we are facing a lot. I understand that. When I got that UNESCO Peace Award, I was so blessed to be on a webcast like this. It was really my first big webcast. I didn't have a light. I didn't have any other things, but there were people from everywhere working on peace. People from Nigeria, people from Japan, people from South America, people from Canada, people from all around the world. And when I was able to see that this is a worldwide thing of people working everywhere, understanding that importance of peace. And that is, yeah, we're not perfect, but that is part of their intent and understanding of how important that is. And there's people like your mother that raised you to understand these things. I think there's probably more people alive right now understanding the importance of peace than ever before. And yet still we're practicing, every day, like you said, we're learning as we go. And sometimes the hard lessons, like, well, for example, what people went through, the Nisei veterans in World War II and their families, the hard lessons sometimes can teach us the most.
That's very true. And, if we practiced peace, or if there were more peace classes or in school, yeah, and I know that they are, people can get their degree in peace education.
Really?
But I know Rotary does a peace certificate, and there's this, there are other peace institutes out there, which are wonderful. And if we were able to take that idea of peace and make it a little bit more mainstream, I don't know. I mean, everybody knows, I don't know. I'm just pontificating. But, one of the things my mother talks about a lot, and it really helped me, was observation versus judgment. I think as humans, we have a tendency to judge. We judge others, we judge ourselves. Everything is a judgment. And if we were able to just kind of shift our mind and think of judgments more as observations,
Yes.
If you look at something as an observation versus a judgment, it's a different feeling. And she was talked about that a handful of years ago, and I always try to have that in the back of my mind, to look at something, whether it's something I've done, maybe I didn't do my Zoom correctly, maybe I forgot to put the camera on, oh, what a horrible mistake. Well, actually, that's a judgment. Maybe I just observe and then learn for next time. But that's a tiny, ridiculous example. But there are much bigger examples. And if you just take a day and try to observe instead of judge, how different it feels at the end of the day. That would be a fun challenge.
That I in my writings, I've written many times about the term, the objective observer. And that part that you're talking about is exactly that part of us that can discern. We're watching, we're discerning, but we're not judging. We're just going, oh, this, this is this. But then you took it even one step further, which I really appreciate, which is taking responsibility. Because with judgments, basically, we are putting our blame on other people, so we don't take responsibility for ourselves. And once we take, and again, I go back to Buddhism. There was a lovely teacher, and I just loved him. He was in Paia, and I went with him to Tibet. He is no longer around, but he always said in one of his last talks at the Paia Zendo there was, I take blame for everything. I take responsibility for everything. I don't put it on anyone else. And when I take responsibility for everything around me, then I can change and I can control myself out of my ego. Not with the ego. As the ego responds and gets upset, then you have responses that are not from the objective observer. There's reactions versus non-reaction. There's that moment of like, aha, I'm here because, and I can learn from. but it's hard not to kick in that reaction of the ego, and once you do,
Is
the other person almost always reacts back with something that is very hard to. Then you have the acceleration of a problem when you judge from the ego, and you can't necessarily take it right back if there's a response that's even stronger back at you.
It's we have this gentleman who comes to the office. He is in his late 70s. His name is Mr. Ito, retired businessman. He comes and he cuts our grass twice a week.
Oh.
And I mean, he doesn't have to. He does it out of love for the center. But he has these wonderful Itoisms, and he'll come and I'll say, oh, so and so is supposed to be here. It's such and such a time for a meeting. Where are they? And then he says, well, you have to be so thankful that somebody is late, because it will help you appreciate more when someone else is on time. Or I'll complain. Yeah, maybe I complained a little bit, maybe about the election. Someone doesn't agree with me. And he said, well, that's wonderful. The more people that disagree with you, the better it is, because you can look at, back at your own ideas and see where, maybe you could fix them. And anyway, I have them all written down in a notebook.
I love those. Maybe you could just frame them, put them in little things. I mean, what a wonderful spin.
It's a great spin. So the next time, whenever I get a little frustrated with life, I go to my little Mr. Ito book.
I'm like, oh, you've written the Itoisms down?
I write them down on little Post-it notes, and then I put them around my office, and every now and then I'll come across one. I'm like, oh.
Well, I see them framed in little beautiful frames and put up on the wall. If people want to understand what we're talking about, I recommend they try to find you, whether they're here on Maui or not. They can go to NVMC, Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, nvmc.org.
Yes.
Have hundreds of stories.
There are.
Just an amazing resource. There's movies, there's clips, there's so much that people can learn. And I honor the fact that you understand the importance of that, and you're dedicating yourself to preserve what has been learned from these wonderful people.
Well, it's really an honor to do it. We love what we do here at the center. We have a dedicated team, dedicated board, dedicated supporters. Anyone who walks through the door. Of course, we're doing it by appointment only now because, of course, it's COVID. But, everybody who walks in, these are uniquely American stories also. We always tell people you don't have to be Japanese American. You don't have to have a love of history to enjoy the stories that are here that go beyond politics or ethnicity or gender, anything like that. These are just amazing stories of humanity, which every culture has, of course, and we're very honored to share the ones that we have. And I thank you, Cindy, because you are just a huge advocate of everything that we do, and I'm in awe of all of the work that you do, and I want to say thank you.
And I do want to just give a shout out to the fact that you have some wonderful, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, take?
Yes, take. It's the Japanese word for bamboo. And we started this series where we invite leaders from across the state and nation to come on and talk about this new normal that we're all going through. We've had everyone from the president of the University of Hawaii, the CEO of Central Pacific Bank, to come on and talk. And take is bamboo, which is known for its resilience and flexibility during difficult times. So that's why we named the series Take. And it's
author series as well. And that's all at NVMC, Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, nvmc.org. And I thank you for taking the time. You had to get in early, set everything up there. You helped me learn how to do my Zooms. You took the time to do that amidst your very, very busy schedule. And I appreciate you, and the Peace Projects will continue with your mother. Next week we'll record one of those and they'll be available. I'm going to also put them all up on the Peace Projects. That's with an S at the end for a reason. There's so many. thepeaceprojects.com. thepeaceprojects.com. I have peace quotes up there. I have a peace meditation up there. I'll have the audio of all these posted up there as well. And it's just my way of giving back after I was so touched to receive the UNESCO Peace Award. And so it's just my way of saying, yes, this is something I can give back as you give back. And what an honor to be here with you today. I thank you so much. A big gasho, a bow of gratitude to you, beautiful Deidre Teagarden. Thank you, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. And I can't wait to watch the other interviews.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.